Welcome to The Arts of the Answer, a co-production of the Arts Council for Monterey County and Access Monterey Peninsula. I'm Steve Elzey, Executive Producer for AMP.
And I'm Paulette Lynch, Executive Director of the Arts Council for Monterey County. We are once again presenting you with artists, organizers, and others who are making wonderful things happen in our region.
My name is Walter Rice. I'm an arts and entertainment writer at the Monterey County Weekly, and I'm glad to have on the show as my guest, painter Lucas Blok. Thanks for coming, Lucas.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Good to be here.
Right. I'm going to start off with a bit of your history coming to the country from your native Holland.
Okay. As I mentioned earlier when we were getting ready for this, I was born in the Netherlands, in Gouda, which is the town of cheese. But I didn't get a long time to stay there. We left by the time I was 1 year old. We moved to Canada, and when I was 4, my family moved back to Holland, and then back to Canada when I was 8. And when I was 12, we moved to the United States, and at 13, I ended up in the Bay Area and settled in.
And that was in the 60s, and you were in the Bay Area?
Yeah.
Pretty creative time?
Pretty creative time. I was playing a little music and starting to get into doing some things. I actually studied guitar, I'm proud to say, with Jerry Garcia. I was really happening, you know.
Wow. So part of that creative atmosphere back then involved, I'm sure, visual art.
Well, part of what moving around had done for me, I think, was I had lost the sense of where I belonged in the world. You know, I was changing languages, I was changing cultural mores, I was making friendships, which usually took a year or two, and then I was losing them. I was spending a lot of time constantly out of control, basically, or the world seemed out of control. And when I finally settled down in the late 60s, sort of was in one place for a couple of years, or 3 or 4 years, I started doing creative work in school and working with music, and I found that world allowed me to sort of discover myself in that process. In the process of creating things, I could actually start making sense of my position within my own experience rather than constantly adjusting to the new world, as it were, which came from the immigration issues.
Can you talk about that painting that you encountered in your apartment?
Yeah,
the canvas, I should say.
I was taking art classes at the local JC, as it were, and in the second year, I was in one of the advanced classes where we had to bring in our work, and I had decided I wanted to do some painting, but I still didn't really have a voice. But I moved into an apartment right about at the same time, and there was a 5 by 5 foot square stretched canvas. It was almost a gift. It sort of just showed up. But then I had to decide what I was going to paint. You know, I had been drawing the figure, I had been doing various exercises with pastels and pencil, but now it was time to actually paint. And so I laid the canvas on the ground, and the painting that was going on in the school at the time was a lot of action painting, which meant you just experience the sense of painting and you let the painting pull you through and sort of let yourself converse in the conversation of paint and the application of paint. And so I just started painting on that canvas, and it went from one area to another. I tried staining and I tried painting, and finally I just kept working, and finally that painting turned into what I think was the seed of the work that I've done for the other 40 years that I've been doing work.
Did you give that painting a name, a title?
No, nothing I do has titles. Part of that is there's no real association or message in it, so they're usually dated or numbered or something like that.
Okay. So in 1976, that's when you moved to Carmel.
Right.
And how did that influence what you painted and how you painted and where you progressed from there?
Well, the painting that I had done back in the late 60s, that first big painting, had kind of atmospheric qualities to how the paint ended up being smushed and pushed around. And then it had rectilinear kind of forms in it as well. I don't know where that came from. I don't know how that form developed. It probably had some hint somewhere. But I did a number of paintings that had that kind of smudgy, atmospheric kind of clouds, and working with stripes and rectilinear forms as well. And then I got into the aspect of having to make a living. And so the painting kind of died back, and I did commercial photography, and I did graphic design, and ran a printing press, various things to make a living. But when I got to the Monterey area, Carmel, I happened to mention this to a friend who I had met, Will Bullis, and he asked if I would join him in a two-man show. So it forced me to, again, go back to painting. And it was very fortuitous. It was like I needed that. And so when I look back a couple of years since I had painted and what to paint in these new series, I decided that I would keep the lineage going, but I was living in Carmel, and fog and the whole thing of atmosphere and the whole sense of the natural world that I was experiencing was really wonderful. I mean, I don't know if you're from this area originally, but the hit when I first got here was pretty stupendous. And so there was a tendency to pull into, or pull that experience into my work a little bit. So the work I started painting was literal, more literal in terms of, rather than atmospheric kind of clouds, they were literally more cloud-like, combined with some line work and minor color sort of just as a highlight. They were more, not necessarily representational, but they were associative, very much so. And that was the beginning. Like everything else, you start with one reason to do a painting or start painting, but as you progress, the paintings start to guide you along, or the process of creating work. You start to see things and experience things in life that keep moving on and start changing. One of the major things, I think, at that time, too, was my wife, Barbara Ruzichka, found herself finally getting into music more. She's a pianist. The type of work I was doing was not necessarily part of the art scene here in Carmel, per se. It was more personal than that, and I didn't really have a school of thought. You know, I wasn't working with other people in similar vein, but my wife was in music, and the power that she was starting to generate in improving her piano playing and her music was influencing how I wanted to make decisions about what I was doing visually. And that process kind of led into color. Just as in music, there's a sense of tonal color and so forth. That conversation started happening in how I developed my painting. The change that started to happen with my painting was that I really didn't understand why I was painting, except I liked making nice pictures, and I had a little precocious tendency to make pictures and images that people liked, and I liked making them. But they weren't necessarily talking about anything that had any real connection to my process so much. And I liked, as I started painting more and more, there's that whole process of what does the painting, what do I want to have, what's happening with me in the painting, and there's a guiding thing that happens with the work for me. At least it was a personal process of sort of finding an experiential aspect to what a painting should be. I liked what happened in the 20th century, where painting no longer became about a narrative or about a political statement or about illustrating a message to the illiterate or any of that stuff. It became a real personal journey for both the artist and for the viewer. And that whole existential aspect to art, I think, was a really defining and profound change in what the purpose of art was. So in trying to relate to that on my own level, you know, I felt that with music there was a sense of mystery about it, in a way that, you know, why do we determine that certain aspects of sound and tone and rhythm become music to us, that we as beings choose to associate in such a way that we find that particular experience emotional, we find it stimulating, we find it, you know, it's an experience in itself. And in that way, I wanted my paintings also to have that similar kind of process, where it's not about something, it's not about me, it's not about a school of thought. It's more about, at the moment of the painting being presented to an audience, it becomes its own entity. And for people to look at it, it becomes really, or I really want a piece to be their experience, that it's part of them. It's a communion between me and the person viewing the painting, that I create the painting from my own experiences and processes, and then when the painting is put on the wall and presented, it becomes the viewer's process and experience. Mm-hmm. And I find that's kind of a fascinating idea. I mean, to me, the whole aspect of how we generate and create our experience in life, our lives, you know, we're not really taught much about that in schools. It sort of becomes a philosophical and personal journey if you're lucky. And I've been fortunate that somehow through my painting, I feel like I have found that in my life, in that process, and I value it a lot, and I try to hold on to that when I do my work.
I want to thank you again, Lucas, for coming on the show.
Well, thank you for having me. Enjoyed it.
My pleasure.
Steve, we're so lucky to have all these talented people choosing to live in Monterey County. Some come for a short while, some stay here the rest of their lives, and we're hoping that our next guest will choose that, and her name is Karen Cruz Hendon. I'm here with Karen Cruz Hendon. She's the curator for the Monterey Museum of Art, meaning both their facilities on Pacific Street and also at La Mirada. Karen, welcome. Thank you for coming. Thank you so much. It is just a pleasure to have you here. I am so excited about your current exhibition with Chuck Close. Can you tell me how that came together and what people might see when they visit?
This specific exhibition is his works on paper, which is from 1975 to the present. So not only do we have some of his really wonderful black and white prints, but then as he went through into the 70s and 80s, we have the super vibrant colors that are his signature style. And so one of the things that I really love about Chuck Close is that not only is he interested in making his art accessible for everybody, but that his story is such a special one in that he is about perseverance and he is about overcoming his obstacles. He grew up in the 40s and in Washington, and he had learning disabilities. He was dyslexic. He had trouble concentrating. And so, you know, there's been times in his life where people had told him that he wouldn't be pursuing college. And, you know, his great ability to be this fantastic artist has really stemmed from him figuring out what it needs to take for him to go forward with everything. And so his signature style of making his art through a grid, and he takes it from photography, where he then puts a grid over it and then transposes it onto a painting. And he gets overwhelmed by the whole, and in order to do so, he's able to break it down into smaller bites and charge forward and put them together to make these amazing portraits. And so, of course, this young person gets older and goes into college, and he actually graduates from the University of Washington. And he gets invited to go on and get his master's in fine arts at Yale. And so, coming from a young person where the thing he was best at was drawing, and that's what made him feel special, and he pursued it. And after going to Yale University and graduating with his MFA, he goes on a Fulbright as a scholar to Vienna, where he ends up studying art and executing art and meeting all these famous artists. And he wasn't interested in doing portraits of famous people. That was what Warhol was about. That was for other artists. He liked doing portraits of his friends. And so, you know, he goes to Paris and he meets Philip Glass for the first time, as Philip Glass is studying piano as a student still, and then comes home and moves to New York. And lo and behold, Philip Glass is doing plumbing for his building, moving people's stuff around for money. And, you know, all these people in Soho start coming to him, living in the same building. And he does portraits of them, and people joke around that, you know, you weren't famous when you walked into Chuck's studio, but after 2 weeks leaving it, you became a famous person. And so a lot of his friends became prominent artists themselves and became famous, and he has done these great portraits of them. In the late 80s, in 1988, as what is known as the incident, he had a spinal artery collapse, and he became a quadriplegic. And so here yet is another obstacle that it got him painting again. And his artwork was already prominent. He was already in the Whitney biennials. He was already very famous. and at the Museum of Contemporary Art in New York City. But again, he turned to his artwork, and it became much more vibrant than it was. He used much more vibrant colors, and not that it changed very much, but art saved his life, and it saved his life on so many occasions, and it's such a wonderful educational story that helps everyone know that we need art in our community. We need art to survive.
Thank you for being here, and thank you for coming in today.
Thank you.
Up next is Jayson Fann.
And I'm so excited. Jayson's an activist, an author, and a painter, and an artist, and so much. It's going to be a great interview. I am so excited to welcome our next guest into the studio. His name is Jayson Fann. He is visiting us from Big Sur. And Jayson, thanks so much for coming in.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Let's start back when you were 14. You made a journey to Pinecrest. Tell us about that.
14, I read a book was called Black Elk Speaks, and I got really inspired by the message of this book. It was written by John Neihart, who's an author, kind of a contemporary of Steinbeck, and it was the story of a man, Black Elk, a Lakota Sioux person, and I read the book, and I decided that I wanted to go and kind of see for myself and meet the people there and see what I had read about, and so that was a big journey, and it kind of really changed the course of events in my life.
Okay, and that was, where did that take place? You hitchhiked somewhere?
I was in Omaha. I'm born in Omaha, Nebraska, and then I hitchhiked from there to Pine Ridge in South Dakota. It's kind of on the edge of South Dakota.
And we're going to skip continents here. You were telling me that you were 16, you received a scholarship. Tell us about that.
Well, a couple years later, I had started listening to the music of a man named Babatunde Olatunji. Who's a great teacher and musician from Nigeria. He's most notably known for his work. He wrote The Drums of Passion, and also he wrote music for Santana. A lot of people know Jingle Ba, the song Jingle Ba. That's actually Baba's song. It's a very famous song. And so I started listening to his music, and I didn't know that I'd end up meeting him. But several years later, I started listening to him, probably around the same time, and then actually met him when I was 17. And so then I started an apprenticeship with him, a musical apprenticeship. And but it was a lot more than music. And then a couple years later after that, he gave me a scholarship to go to school in Ghana, in West Africa, at the University of Ghana.
Tell us about your experiences down at Esalen.
Well, I first came to Esalen Institute. I was straight out of farming school, of all things. I had gone to Cortez Island in British Columbia to study organic farming. Actually, I came down to Big Sur first because I heard of an apprenticeship that was going to happen with a family, Esalen Indian family. And they were offering an apprenticeship, and it was taking people on pack trips throughout the Ventana Wilderness. And that actually brought me to Esalen Institute. So it was my interest really in Native American culture initially that brought me to Esalen. And then I continued studying with Baba, and then I came back to Esalen, and I got a job managing the farm and garden after that, yeah. And that grew into another kind of long-term relationship of building an art center, the Esalen Art Center, and then founding the Esalen International Arts Festival. I was the founder and director of that festival for 9 years, and bringing artists from all over the world. And essentially the mission was to implement a cultural diversity initiative for the Institute, which was something that I spearheaded and facilitated organized for 9 years.
Tell us about the Big Sur Spirit Garden.
Well, the Big Sur Spirit Garden was for me a vision of first having my own studio to be able to create my own work, and also to create a kind of a crossroads of sorts where people from all different backgrounds, all different cultures could share their work, and where I could be an ambassador of sorts of all these things that I had been exposed to my local community. And as you know, Big Sur has a very rich cultural heritage, and with many, many artists over years and years, and currently. And one thing that I saw that there was really a gap was in this multicultural arts and education. A lot of people weren't mixing socially. It's kind of a divided community in that sense, and I thought that there could be some work done there, in terms of cultural bridging.
Sure. Tell us about some of the various events that you have there.
I've had artists in residence from Egypt, from Cuba. I've had painters and metal workers from Haiti. After the earthquake in Haiti, I went to Haiti and launched a Haitian arts project supporting artists in Haiti to create some economy particularly for these families in Jacmel who are, beautiful artists, but just no tourism. And of course, you know what happened with the earthquake. Yes. So we brought over artists and dancers from Haiti to do residencies, Colombia, Venezuela, Korea, all different places in Africa. I've had artists from across the board, across Africa, from East Africa, South, West. So it's music, dance, theater, poetry, performance art. It's also my art studio. Yes. All of the productions I do are really just a community service because I don't take any profit from these artists, because often you bring in these groups and they're traveling and they mostly stay with me at my house, and I feed them and provide a stage for them to perform, and it's been a really beautiful intersection of a lot of different people.
Well, now, Jayson, how can people find out about what you're up to? Where should they go?
The best way is to go Big Sur Spirit Garden and sign up for our email list, and you get the newsletter. Okay. And the newsletter is our calendar of events, and it's everything. You can also find me on Facebook, Spirit Garden Productions.
Well, thank you so much. We could go on forever, and I hope you come back because there's so much more to talk about. Yeah. But thanks for coming up, and thanks for all the great work that you do as an artist and also in terms of activism and social justice. We really appreciate that.
Thank you.
Up next is Estampa de las Americas, presented by Bernice House.
Hello, I'm Bernice House, Community Outreach Coordinator for the Arts Council. Today, we will showcase dancers from our cultural group, Estampas de las Americas. They will be performing the most beautiful and exuberant traditional folkloric dances from Jalisco, Michoacán, and Veracruz, Mexico. The main mission of this group is to build a generation of children based on pride, respect, and cultural identity, eager to share the cultural heritage. Enjoy.
I'm really excited to be interviewing Megan Heath. She is a very passionate advocate for bringing creative technologies to everybody.
Let's go.
I'm here with Megan Heath today. She is the coordinator for the BTOP program for the Monterey County Office of Education. We're talking today about digital literacy and creative technologies. We find that the arts are the answer for developing the workforce, what people call the 21st century skills. And there's so much to talk about. Thank you, Megan, for coming in today.
Sure.
We're all especially concerned about teens and how we can give them opportunities, how we can keep them really focused on hopefulness toward their own future, and how we can make sure that they get the skills that they're going to need to move forward no matter what they want to do.
Many people kind of assume that teens and young people are so-called digital natives, where they
Yeah, right. And they're already digitally literate. And that may be true, but I was surprised to find that there are so many teens that although they may know how to use a computer, they may not really use it to its fullest potential and may not really understand the really meaningful applications to computers and the importance of those skills. For example, a 17-year-old kid that I met didn't even really know how to use email recently, a high school kid. When I went to talk to another class at Soledad, at a Soledad high school, most of the kids said that they really didn't use computers at home, and when they did use computers, they maybe fooled around on YouTube or Facebook, and that was pretty much it. To me, that still qualifies as some sort of digital divide. So what we do is we help them in a fun way learn how to use digital technology and computers to learn really meaningful, marketable skills, but they're still also fun. For example, learning how to make a multimedia presentation about, you know, the hazards of underage drinking. We did that with Sun Street Centers, a youth program in Sun Street Centers in Salinas and in King City. You know, we offer after-school programs, making cartoon animation projects with elementary school kids in Greenfield, and they love it. I mean, it's not only fun and exciting, but they kind of realize, oh my gosh, I can make this cool thing out of nothing, you know? They make their own stories come to life, which is so exciting to watch them experience that. I mean, we do that for elementary school kids, we do it for teens. In the youth center where we've been working with a special group of incarcerated youth, we wanted to give them something, again, creative to do, but something that was also useful, practical skills. So we taught them how to create their own little animated projects. And you know, we gave them lots of freedom. We just wanted them to know how to use the tools, the basic tools to express themselves and to tell their own personal story. We finally got the big Techmobile, which is a fully functioning computer and digital media arts classroom on wheels. So we have a computer lab on a customly designed big rig truck. And so we drive the classroom to the people. Our focus is South County and more rural, more isolated areas, because those areas tend to have very limited computer access or internet access. So we try to make it as easy as possible to get them to learn these skills by coming to the mobile classroom.
Well, Megan, thank you for coming in today, and thank you for all your wonderful work and your willingness to go everywhere to make these opportunities available for everyone. We really, really appreciate your work.
Thank you.
We hope you enjoyed another episode of The Arts Are the Answer.
But this is your show.
And we are always looking for guests, sponsors, and volunteers.
Visit us at artsformc.org/answer.